Alright, we have something super special today, and I am manual focusing, so this might be a little bit of a thing. So sometimes you come across a camera that you don't really know too much about and you haven't really heard too much about, and then you just buy it because it's super cheap. In this instance, this was $40, and the reason is that the meter in this is dead, which is fine, not an absolute necessity. And the other thing being the lens. It's got haze in it, and it has enough haze in somewhere in the middle of the elements there that it affects picture quality, especially when you are shooting directly into light sources. So, not the greatest deal in history. Now, I just wanted to go over it, just kind of look over it. I've already put a roll of HP5, shot it at 1600, so pushed it 2 stops. So I've put a roll of that through it, and I've put another roll of film through it. I believe it was 250D Vision 3 Cine film. I might be wrong. I might have just done a roll of XX or Orwell. But man, the thing that I want to go over with this camera is just the absolute insane build quality. I'm sure I'm going to title this video with the word Leica in it, because when you think about cameras and build quality and chrome and brass, you tend to think about Leica. I have to say that this camera feels like if a Leica M3 was an SLR. I'm going to take that lens off, but one of the tricks to getting these f-mount lenses off is you got to go to 5.6, and then that's it. So I just kind of want to go over the build quality of this camera because it is unbelievable. When I was looking into this camera, people did mention online that the build quality is amazing, but they undersold it. Honestly, it's unbelievably just quality. Everything about it just screams quality. For instance, one of my favorite things to do is, let me get my microphone down there. Man, it's just the tightest fit and finish. And sometimes I just sit around and I keep this next to me on my table while I'm working. I'll just reach over and just let me shut up. You just kind of push it and it is just so well machined. It feels like a clasp or a piece of machining on like a luxury watch. It is unbelievable. Kind of go crazy over things like build quality and rewind levers, but I mean, I gotta say, just honestly, look at that thing. The machining is so precise. Seriously, this is just fun to do. Just like that. It is just so incredible. Oh man, and unfortunately it's really shiny, so I might be clipping some of those highlights in this video. But man, I don't care. So it's got that Nikon's f-mount, because it's not really Nikkormat, it's a Nikon. There's just a name. It's a Nikon. And it's probably, I've handled a number of Nikons, and this has got to be just the best built, Nikon. I've spent some time with an f1. I have a Canon f1. Was it an f2? The Nikon might have been an I forget which f it was, but I've got a Canon f1, and this thing is even better built than that camera. And that camera is legendary for being a heavy, chunky piece of brass with just really fine machining. So let's pass over to this advanced lever. And that aperture right there, that little window, this window's for the meter, but this window is your frame count. And it is the best frame counter I've ever seen. It's incredibly exact. It is absolutely dead on, that arrow and those little hash marks. It's unbelievable. So let's that shutter doesn't sound amazing, I'll admit, but that rewind lever, I can feel like all the different little gears. I can tell when the meter turns on, which it doesn't because it's not working, but I can tell when the meter turns on right there. Then it starts advancing the film while winding the shutter. Right there, the shutter's wound, and then it finishes advancing the film, and that's it. You can feel every bit of gear and machinery in there just like lock in and out of the little cogs or detents or springs or levers, whatever. And it just feels absolutely perfect. The shutter, it's not the most amazing sounding or feeling shutter. And the mirror definitely has a little bit of slap. But right next to it, you've got, right before you shoot, you can lock that mirror up so quickly and easily before you take your shot. You can just be looking through the viewfinder, right? Right there, focus, just reach your thumb back, lock the mirror up. That's it. Mirror goes back down, and you're ready to go. And just that mount, that lens release right there, that might be the most awesome feeling lens release I've ever handled. $20 camera, all the speeds are accurate, there's no frame advancing issues, nothing like that. It just works, and it works so well. In the lens, it's a solid gore, which means it is likely just a Tamron. You might be able to see the haze in there, but it's usable. It's not amazing. Anyway, the lens is not in amazing condition, but it is definitely usable. Totally in more than usable condition, absolutely in reliable condition, and with this 35 2.8, it does really well. And surprisingly, that haze, let's make sure we're at 5.6. We are. So the haze in that lens, when you're shooting at night, kind of turns into a nice little attribute of it because you get really bloomy highlights from street lights. But shooting in direct sunlight during the day definitely has some noticeable issues. However, the look is not that overwhelming. So if I wanted to keep this setup like this, I could totally just use it as is for 40 bucks. I don't need a meter. I'm shooting mostly black and white anyway. So this can absolutely be the broke film shooters or the film shooter on a budget. You can just have this set up, right? And you can just shoot pretty much as much film as you want if you're shooting black and white and you're bulk rolling and you're developing at home. You can save so much money when you find little deals like this, these little sleeper cameras that are incredibly old and people aren't using them anymore. But they're in absolutely functional shape, It's such a good find. I'm so happy that I got lucky finding this camera. The one issue that I am having with this camera, the viewfinder is not so great. The viewfinder on my F1 is really good. The viewfinder on the Leica R is decent. And the viewfinder on this guy is not so good. But let's take a look inside, because it does not have a horizontal traveling shutter, even though it has a maximum shutter speed of 1/1000. Now, cameras of of a similar time frame or a similar age to this camera usually have rubber or cloth shutters, but this guy, nope, vertical, and just really well timed. I know, I'm just, I can't help it. That is just one of the most amazing pieces of machining I think I've ever come across. This thing, just so beautiful. And the chrome and black, obviously a classic. And the only real usability issue I'm having with this is, I gotta say, it's with the mount. The way the lens aperture is mated to the meter in order for it to give a proper reading, which, it doesn't work, but I still need it to function properly. Otherwise, the lens is not going to be on the mount properly. The aperture is really difficult to turn, and it's easy to slip while you're using it because it's way back here and it's tiny. So this camera works better, I guess, if you're going to be running aperture priority, and you don't really have to look away because the shutter is right here. And it's really easy to use when you're shooting. You just have your finger right there, and it works really well. And here's the stop down lever, which you don't need because, it doesn't have a working meter anyway. All right, that is a fairly brief look at a $40 absolute dream machine. I am crazy about this camera. I can't recommend it enough if you find it in usable shape. And I got very lucky, so just felt like sharing that. We'll be doing a much longer review-ish / use video, real world use video, or whatever they're being called these days, very soon. Absolutely love it.